Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa for yet another video on the Nordschleife challenge. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and today, as per popular request, I'm going to be taking out this massive American beast, the Dodge Viper RT10 from 1995. This is a front-engined rear-wheel drive monster which produces 400 or thereabouts, 400 to 415 brake horsepower at 4,600 RPM from a 8-litre V10, which is probably going to be some sort of record in this challenge. I doubt I'm going to have another 8-litre vehicle. It also produces 630 Newton meters of torque, which equates to about 465 foot-pounds at about 3,600 RPM. So it's got a lot of torque low down, a lot of power supposedly high up, a massive V10 engine. I'm sure it's a V. Is it a V10 or a V8? No, it's a V10. A massive V10 engine at the front, so it's going to be really heavy at the front. Rear wheel drive, all the power going to the rear wheels. It's going to be really oversteery at the rear. It's American, so, and we're talking 90s. Not often did you get a good car, a good supercar style from America in the 90s, maybe barring the Corvette. Muscle cars certainly, so this thing's going to definitely go really quickly in a straight line. I have no doubt about that. It's just a matter of the corners that I'm going to be concerned about. But that being said, this car, despite having all the power, does have some pretty good tyres. So at least we have the tyre width available, which might help us out. Front tyres are 275 40 R17s. So hopefully that should allow the even distribution or better distribution of the mass at the front from the engine. And the rear tyres are 335 35 R17s. So that should help. 335 tyres, probably the widest tyres I think I've driven thus far. Should help with the power delivery. Not sure how that's going to be with the entire suspension setup. I think it's a double wishbone suspension at the front and double wishbone at the back, so I guess it should be okay. I'm not entirely sure. 0 to 60 is about 4.5 seconds with a top speed of 165 miles per hour. This thing is certainly no slouch. It is big, it is quick, it is not as heavy as maybe you'd think at a curb weight of 1,595 kilos, so that is not as heavy as you would think. Some people might think a car like this, being big, American, massive engine, would probably be heavier. Oh, by the way, for Americans, what did I say, about 1.5 tons, right? It's probably about 3,500 pounds for those people who work in pounds. I think Americans, and I don't know who else works in pounds generally apart from the Brits, but we work in both. Anyway, to make matters, I say worse, but to perhaps make it more exciting, the only way to get the power down is through a 6-speed manual H-pattern gearbox. This is going to be quite an experience. I've selected silver with blue stripes because I think that actually is one of the colours that looks best with a Viper. I think the silver and blue stripes, or whites with blue stripes, but the silver one just looked a little bit better. And as usual, I will be taking this around for some practice laps on Patreon. So if you want to support me on Patreon and see those, please do consider supporting me. Link is in the description. But for the rest of you, what you will see next is, after my practice laps, you're going to see a couple of, hopefully 2 or 3 hot laps in which I try to get it somewhere along the, I don't know where it's going to go, somewhere in that timesheet that isn't the bottom. To be honest, I think this thing is going to be challenging. If this thing can corner, I think this thing is going to definitely be around the M4 territory. If it can corner. If it cannot corner, we're probably looking around the Audi Sports Quattro territory. which was a fast car, terrible handling, at least in Assetto Corsa. And in terms of drivability and the driver ratings, I have no idea where this car is going to go. I've done 13 miles in it before a few years ago, and that was it. And that was 2 laps around Circuit to the South, I think. 2 or 3 laps around there, and that was it. But anyway, that's enough blabbering. Let's get on with it and let's see exactly where this ends up. Okay, here we go. Let's see what kind of lap time I can get on this car. Now I'm going to tell you now. Leave your suggestions in the comments box already. Let's see how close you can get. But I'm going to tell you now, this car is surprisingly good. And by surprisingly good, I mean it's fast in a straight line, but it can handle corners better than I thought it would. It's still got the problems that you would expect. Big heavy engine up front. It is going to be understeery. That's normal, but in terms of things like wheel spin and oversteer, you do not get much of that on power. The on power oversteer is not really that noticeable. There's a little bit, so you have to be a little bit careful, but more so you do have the understeer of the front of the car, so you do have to be aware of that. For example, there you can, right there's some just through most of the corners, you just feel that the car needs to be a little bit slower just to get it around, because it just cannot take the speed that you expect it to be able to take. It cannot take. Brakes are fairly sensitive, so you might hear me lock up a few times like I just did there, coming into the hairpin. But otherwise, this is surprisingly easy to drive. I wasn't expecting a massive V10, 8-litre V10 to be this easy to drive. I was expecting a lot more of a headache with a car like this, but well done. Now obviously this is a mod, and it may not be perfectly representative of the real life car, but if it is, Dodge did a good job. I never really liked Dodge Vipers that much. I mean, I like the name. I think nobody could argue the name of a Dodge Viper, but in terms of the design, I was never a big fan of them until the more modern Vipers. I always found that these Vipers just looked a bit bulky, a bit too big, like they were trying to be a supercar, and then they just happened to put a massive engine at the front, which just did not work at all. So there is that. But that being said, driving this car now, I'm definitely not against it. It's fairly nice to drive, comfortable. There's a snap of oversteer. It's fine. We have a second lap to not worry about that. I've got plenty of time I can make up as well. So you do have to be careful with this car, but it is actually quite a nice car to drive. I'm not sure how well it would do on British B roads. I don't think the car was designed for that. But on a racetrack, it's not doing horribly. It's doing a lot better than I thought it would. In terms of feel, as I said, I'd think I'd like this to feel somewhere around. I think an 80s supercar is the kind of feeling I'd expect from it, which is what I'm getting. I'm not getting really too much of a 90s. I'm not getting a mid-90s feel from this. It feels a little bit more slightly unrefined. That's not a bad thing. Fifth gear is extremely tall. That is a bad thing for for this particular challenge. It's not a bad thing overall. You just see how much time I can gain in different places. Cannot remember what happened there. I cannot remember how I binned it on that corner. Gear changes are nice and slick. I have to admit that that's really nice with the car. In fact, a lot of things with this car just do feel nice. I'm not a fan of the 3-spoke wheels. I think they just look ridiculous. As I said, I'm not a massive fan of the design of the car, but overall, in terms of driving, this is fairly good. Second and third gear really are your friends around a lot of this. Because of the tall gearing, you can actually hold it in third gear for a lot of this section, for example, which is nice. It has the torque down low and it has the power up high. It doesn't really rev that far. Ooh, there's another lockup. You've got to be careful with the lockups, otherwise that happens. It doesn't really rev that high at all. 5,950 RPM I think is its limit, which is a bit strange, but there you go. Really should take second there. Quick laps though, certainly quick laps. When I said it would be challenging, I thought it would be challenging around the M4. I think I'm about right. Although you get to see if I manage to piece together the next lap really well. I have a feeling that, given from my practice laps and what I was seeing, I have a feeling this could challenge for first place. But you can just see that understeer right there. It does catch you out. You start driving the car and you think, oh, this car can do that, this car can do that, and then you realise very quickly, oh, this car cannot do that. It's not capable of that. It seems like it should be capable of it, but it isn't. The massive rear tyres really help with grip. They really keep the car planted and allow it to get that 400 horsepower down very nicely. And the 400 and whatever it is, 465 newton meters of torque, something like that. It really helps get all of that down very, very nicely. So there you go. That's that. Look at that fifth gear. That fifth gear is probably the one thing I really do not like about this car in the driving. Everything else about it, I'm actually quite happy with. I think it's overall it's quite done well. They have done well with it. Now I said the top speed on this car is what, around 165? Okay, come on, slow it down. There you go. Slowing the car down, not easy. First lap is an 8:04, which is I think just behind the M4, and I had a few little mishaps along the way. So let's see what I can do on this second lap. See what kind of lap time I can take. Driving with this car, try not to throw the car around too much. It doesn't like being thrown around all too much. And also, as you notice there, when you're downshifting, heel and toe, kind of important. You really do want to blip the throttle as not to get the wheels jerking into the previous gear and just the rotation throwing the car off. Gear shifts are really smooth and you can really feel what you're doing. It's very when you change gear on this, it's a very direct action. It's a very not profound, it's a very engaging action. Obviously better than paddle shift regardless, but it's just when you change gear, the noise that you've got, the way the gears, the way the revs drop off, you know you're changing gear, you know what you're doing, and it does have, getting in the right gear at the right time really has a serious impact on your performance, particularly if you're going into 5th. That would be massive. Going to 5th gear at the wrong time and you'll have lost all semblance of power, because it just bogs down. It's too long, as I said. See how smooth you can be on this. It's so easy to be smooth with this car, but it's also so very easy to understeer into a wall. So you do have to have a balance there. I'd say if you're driving this car, try not to shove it into gears just really quickly. Try to be smooth with it. Remember, this is a car from the 90s. It doesn't have incredibly quick gear changes. You can't just, the engine does have a bit of rev hang, so you want to be aware of that. Let the needle drop and come to you before you try to shove the next gear in. That will just keep things nice and smooth and ticking over really well. And again, with the downshifts, as you've noticed, I'm heel and towing all the way, and you really do have to bring the revs up for some gears quite a bit. First gear is also quite useful in here, which is something you wouldn't say, but in some cars you really cannot use first gear. Cars of this kind of power, you just spin, you have to be really careful. But in this car, I think with the wide tyres, it does give you the option, or it does give you the ability to use that first gear, which is good. It doesn't really feel like a rear-wheel drive in a way, because for a rear-wheel drive I would be expecting the car to be skating around a little bit more, like for example the BMW, the M4. Now the M4 certainly I think it's more engaging to drive than this. It's just more active. I think because these tyres are so wide, I don't want to leave this in 4th, you know. These tyres are so wide. You end up, I guess, never really needing to counter steer, which is strange. It's a strange experience on a rear-wheel drive, front-engine rear-wheel drive car, not having to counter steer. Having this quite nice balance is surprising. It really is surprising. Now my target here is 8 minutes. Now I have no idea if I can manage that, but I am going to try. At the moment I'm at 8 minutes 2.6. Fine. Let's see if I can better that, and I should be able to better it in this section. This is where things can go wrong in all cars. This is probably one of the most critical sections right here coming up. So this one and the next corner and the corners that follow from here, that I said you basically leave in 3rd gear. Why that went red I'm not sure. My wheel was still on the grass, sorry, on the curb. Could do a 3rd lap on this. I actually do want to do a 3rd lap, because I feel like there's a lot that this car can do. It actually feels quite good to drive with this car. An easy way to lose traction on a car like this is going over a curb whilst you're turning and then trying to put the power down. That's just a little bit too much for the car. I do think that one of the upside on this car with it actually doing the... Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. There you go. Okay. The upside of this car with its wide tyres is that it just has a lot of grip. The downside of this car with its wide tyres is that those wide tyres kind of ruin the engagement for the car, because they make the car too predictable. Actually no, predictable is the wrong word. I think what would the right word be for this? If it's not predictable, it's too tame, actually. Yep, I think tame. Because it's got so much grip, particularly at the rear, you're never really fighting the car. The only thing you fight on this car is that fifth gear, and also you fight some of that understeer that you get just with the engine being so heavy and up front. So I feel like this car was designed to go really quick, which obviously we've shown that it's capable of doing, but it was designed not only to go really quick, but it was designed to what was I going to say? It was designed to be very easy to drive, unlike perhaps something like a Corvette. 8 minutes and 450 milliseconds. 8 minutes and half and 4 tenths or 5 tenths. Okay, one more lap then. Let's see what we can do. And if this lap goes bad, as some people have noticed, my third laps tend to go badly. But if this lap goes badly, then we just scrap it and put the final scores up. But I think that's an incredible lap time. I'm not even sure if that is actually first place. That might just be first place. But certainly if I do another lap and I get better by a tenth or two, it's definitely going to be first place. But I'm going to have to check what first place is. 7 minutes 59 is certainly first place. As I said, I've been surprised by this car. It's a very, very good car to drive. Not the most engaging though, certainly not. It's just good. So I wouldn't say this is the kind of car that you'd want to take out on a drive all the time. But this is the kind of car that you'd want if you want to go fast. From this era, I would probably say that sort of like the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis and things like that would be the more flamboyant cars, whilst this is the more this is the more just get it around with minimal fuss kind of car. That's what I think this is. You can just see there, I missed the first apex and the understeer on the car just pushed outwards, and there wasn't much I could do. That's okay. Come on, don't understeer. So usually when it gets to my third lap, if I do a third lap, I'm tended to I push over the boundaries of the limits of the car, which is why I'm always trying my best to I maybe drive 95% whilst I'm recording normally, but when it gets to the third lap I just tend to go, I'm just going to try and floor it and see what happens. As you can see, case in point. One thing I wish Assetto Corsa had was realistic damage. That would be awesome. If someone could add in like a realistic damage thing. Because then you drive this car and if you mess around with the gears, you're going to destroy your gearing. If you're just throwing it, shoving it through gears without taking any care for it, you just grind up gears one at a time and just destroy your gears. Or slip your clutch. That would be an interesting one if you just keep doing that. So, what do I think? Where do I think this car is going to go on the driver engagement? I think this has got to be very much. I think it's fair for this to be around the Lamborghini Miura. I do think it's fair for it to be around the Lamborghini Miura. It's just a matter of where and how close to the Lamborghini Miura, which will determine, does it go ahead of it, does it go behind it? I think it's going to go just behind it, and the reason I say that is I think the Lamborghini still sounded better. It just gives a more engaging drive due to the sounds. Not to say that this sounds bad, it sounds very nice, but the Lamborghini just had that little bit more in terms of driving, and the power was smooth and it revved up, and this thing lacks in revving. It has plenty of power, plenty of torque, but it just lacks a little bit in the revving, and of course it's very sticky. The tyres are very sticky. Where you felt that the Lamborghini was it was just running really well, this just feels like it's a bit too tame. So with the Lamborghini, I felt like if I started pushing it more, I would start struggling. But with this, I'm pushing it more, as you can see. I'm what, three seconds up or something like that from what I was, and I've pushed it, and I'm still not really struggling at all. In fact, this is surprisingly still easy to drive. Like, really easy to drive. And that does not seem like something that, a sentence that should be going together. Dodge Viper and easy to drive just doesn't seem like a sentence that should be said. But being 2 seconds up and just, or 3 seconds up, whatever it is, 1.8, losing a little bit of time here. There we go, bring it back. It just doesn't make any sense as from a perspective of driving this sort of car. But that is how it is. Even the corner there coming up to Mini Carousel, which almost caught me out. Mini Carousel, I hate that corner. Genuinely do. I don't know what it is about that corner. It just, the track surface just does not work there. I think they might have repaved that actually. Right, let's really rev this out. Now, still, just not enough. Yeah, I think this is going to go around Miura territory. Obviously, this is a top of the boards. By the way, the last lap would not have had this at the top of the leaderboards. It would have been second place. The roof managed it in 8 minutes .24 something, so it would not. This was a 8 minutes .4, but that is a lap time to consider. 7 minutes 57.53, whatever it is. that has put this car straight to the top of the leaderboards, and I'll be honest, it was much easier getting that lap time out of this car than it was getting that lap time out of the roof CTR Yellowbird, which is around the same era, isn't it? It's about 5 years earlier. Yellowbird was what, 1988 to, was it 88 to 91 or somewhere around that, or was it 85 to, I'm not sure. It's in the same sort of era, only split apart by a few years. We're not talking about, 15, 20, 30 years of difference. It's only a few years, but this was so much easier to get a lap time out of. And I think it's those tyres at the back that really have helped. So this goes to the top of the leaderboard very, very quickly. No worries on that. By what was that? 3.5, 4 seconds? I think it was 7.57. So it's 3 seconds, yeah, almost 3 seconds to 2.6. I don't even know. I'm not even looking at either table. The table you see up on screen, I do not have. I've not made it yet, and the table for the previous round I do not have on hand. In terms of drivability, where does this car go? Well, I think this car rightly deserves to be in the top 10. It's just a matter of where in the top 10 it deserves to be. And I think the right place for this is around the Miura, but just below the Miura there's the Elise SC, and I'm just trying to figure out whether this is a better car to drive than that. It's better than the CTR Yellowbird in terms of, as I said, the Yellowbird got the points for just being insane to drive, but the Yellowbird was too difficult to drive. So that was the problem with the Yellowbird. With this car, it's not too difficult to drive, but it's too easy to drive, and that in and of itself is a problem. So where does it? All of those are really close. The Sierra RS500 is also included in that area, isn't it? So I've got to consider that. Oops, wasn't what. Okay, so you can't really drift this. I do want to know what that. I want to know what that orange light is. The upward-facing arrow. Not a clue. Oh, where do I put this? I think this is going to go just ahead of the. I think this is going to go just ahead of the Yellowbird. Yeah, I'm going to put this just ahead of the Yellowbird. So not only has it topped the Yellowbird in the lap times, it's also topped the Yellowbird on the driver charts. And the reason I'm putting it ahead of the Yellowbird is it was much easier to put the power down on this car and still feel like you had to go fast. The reason it's not ahead of the Elise or the Miura though is because it was a bit too easy to go fast. So had it been more engaging with the driver, had I had to make more driver inputs but still been controllable, I would have probably put this ahead of the Miura. This would have been in M4, again M4 territory, RX-7 territory, maybe Exige S territory. But, and that's the same, I think the same case can be made for the Yellowbird, but in the opposite direction. Had it been slightly easier to control and not trying to kill you every few seconds, then that would have been also in that territory. So those are, I think, two cars, both incredibly fast, both of similar eras, but both missing out for the opposite reasons. I think that sounds fair. I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa and the Nordschleife Challenge. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what time you thought. Did you get the right time? What did you think of my driving? I know it's not great, but I do try, and I'm always improving. Usually As I said, I drive these cars for 2 laps before I've actually done it, done the actual lap. I don't really practice any further than that. Jumping between cars is kind of odd. If you can do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/ECGadget. Your support would be massively appreciated. It would really help me out. And also, you can find me on social media at ECGadgetLP for both Twitter and Instagram. That is all from me, and I will see you next time on Assetto Corsa for another video on the Nordschleife challenge. And I think I know exactly which car I'm going to be checking out next. Leave a comment with your guess for what the next car is, and of course any suggestions you might have. I'll see you then.